Cities have problems. Mayors have priorities. Tonight are the issues that matter to you, priorities for the person who will be elected mayor of Cincinnati. We're about to find out.
From Local 12 News, the 2017 Cincinnati Mayoral Debate. Now, live from the Corbett Auditorium at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts in Over-the-Rhine, the moderator for tonight's debate, Rob Braun.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to one of the most beautiful facilities in our area, Cincinnati School for the Creative and Performing Arts. We very much appreciate the school's hospitality in hosting tonight's event. We will bring the candidates out in just a moment, but first, a little bit about them. John Cranley is 43 years old. He is in his first term as Cincinnati mayor, taking office in 2013. He also served on Cincinnati City Council from 2000 to 2009. In between his time on council and being elected mayor, he worked as an attorney and real estate developer. Mr. Cranley holds a bachelor's degree from John Carroll University, along with law and theology degrees from Harvard. He lives in Hyde Park with his wife and son. Yvette Simpson is 39 years old. She has served on city council since 2011. Ms. Simpson graduated from Miami University and the University of Cincinnati College of Law. In addition to being on council, she works as an attorney. She is single and lives in the West End. The audience here in the Corbett Auditorium has been asked to remain silent with one exception, and that's right now, when they join me in welcoming John Cranley and Yvette Simpson to the stage. Questioning the candidates tonight are three people who know this city very, very well. They are Local 12's veteran City Hall reporter, Jeff Hirsch. The host of Cincinnati Issues, Sunday mornings on Star 64, who's also heard weekday mornings on Soul 101.5, ladies and gentlemen, Lincoln Ware. And Local 12 News reporter, Anjanette Levy, is here with us tonight. Thanks very much for being with us, all three. Before we go any further, though, tonight, what we are doing here is being overshadowed, of course, by the tragedy in Las Vegas. And we want to take this opportunity to pause for just a moment of silence to remember those victims. So join me, if you will. Thank you all very much. This is the format for tonight's debate. A panelist will ask a question, after which each candidate has 90 seconds each to answer that question, and 30 seconds each for rebuttal. Each candidate will also receive 90 seconds each for a closing statement at the end of the broadcast. Local 12's Jeff Hirsch gets to ask the first question tonight of Mr. Cranley. Jeff.
Good evening, Mr. Cranley. Cincinnati is basically 50% white and 50% African American. One of the mayoral candidates is white, the other is African American. And once you get past all of the other issues, and there's certainly plenty of them, will this race ultimately, on election day, come down to race?
Jeff, thank you for your question. Thanks for hosting, and thank you for doing a moment of silence for the victims and families in Las Vegas. I also want to remind everyone to continue to help the victims of Puerto Rico and Texas and in Florida. They all still need our help. This is about a city that election in city is about uniting people. I'm proud that our administration's policies are working for all of Cincinnatians. Doesn't mean it's perfect, doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement, but we're moving in the right direction. We have seen tremendous job growth over the last 4 years, including some of the largest single investments in the history of the city, such as the Children's Hospital expansion, Kroger building a grocery store downtown for the first time in 40 years, Mercy Hospital locating in Bond Hill, which is a predominantly African-American neighborhood. But that progress has been progressive, and we have worked to close gaps, racial gaps. For 20 years, before I was elected, the city only did about 2 to 3% of its contracts with African-American businesses. I promised, and people laughed at me when I did 4 years ago, that we would get that to 15% within 4 years. I'm proud to say that by collaborating, working with people, looking at best practices around the country in Atlanta and in Cleveland, we adopted policies that have allowed us to get to 17% last year, and we're doing better in the first quarter of this year.
Time, Mr. Cranley. Thank you very much, Ms. Simpson. You have 90 seconds.
I also want to thank you all for hosting this debate, everyone who's tuning in. I want to echo the sentiments for victims across our country, not just Las Vegas, but as the mayor articulated, those who are being affected by the disasters that we're seeing across our country. The answer is no. I don't believe that this is about race, and here's why I know that. One, when I talk to voters across the city, and I've been doing that for the last year, and of course, 6 years before that, what I hear is that voters in Clifton are as concerned about transportation as those in Bond Hill. Voters in Evanston are as worried about their MSD rates as those in Westwood. I ran for office because I wanted to be someone who represented everyone. The primary results showed that we got as much support in Oakley as we did in Roseline. We are the candidate that brings people together because we actually spend time listening to all 52 neighborhoods and serving them. Our city is great because of our diversity. A city as diverse as ours deserves a leader who's not going to pit one community against the other, but bring them together. I pride myself having a career that works with all kinds of people, and we are so much stronger together than we are apart. I've taken time to make sure that I cross this city, and I let people know I work for you, and our work makes sure that it represents the interest of the many and not the few. We need a mayor who is going to respond to all 52 neighborhoods, and I am that mayor.
Ms. Simpson, thank you. Mr. Cranley, your rebuttal, sir.
Well, like I said, our policies are working. The city is moving in the right direction, and I don't believe we should put those policies at risk. Our efforts are also aware of the fact that there are historical disparities that we're working to remedy. I already mentioned our efforts to increase the number of African American women-owned businesses that do business with the city, but we're also working to reduce poverty and expand opportunity. Our Child Poverty Collaborative brings 28 different organizations together to share practices, to work together in collaboration to reduce poverty and help make sure that the city's renaissance applies to all.
You know, what we know about great cities is that there are cities that are growing and serving those who have much, but great cities are those who also serve those who have the least. And I'm proud of my record of making sure that I serve people who are experiencing homelessness, victims of sex trafficking, our young people, small businesses, and neighborhoods. If we're going to be a great city for the future, we have to make sure that all interests are protected, and most importantly, that we serve those who need us most, and that we serve the individuals who live in our city, those people who call our city home, and I'm proud of my record on that. I think thank you.
Time. Lincoln Ware, you have the next question.
All right, let's talk about Children's Hospital. One council member called your efforts to get more money from Children's for Avondale. They called it extraction. Why would any developer work with you if you became mayor, knowing that you might try to get money from them at the last minute? How do you respond to that?
So a strong business community is vital to any thriving city. I'm proud of my record of supporting the business community, including Children's Hospital. It's an amazing institution, and we have partnered with them to make sure that the work that they do, they can continue to do. They partnered with us on the youth study, which is already having impact in our communities, making sure our young people are served. We partnered with them on Vernon Manor project. I was part of the team that got the GAP funding to make sure that deal got done, $10 million to finish that project. I wanted to see a win-win. David Taylor, who's the CEO of Procter & Gamble, says we should always try to find the third way. He said that you can have one perspective over here and another perspective over here, and that if you find the third way, you know you've got it right. What we didn't want to see was vacancy and blight in the area around the hospital. And so we proposed a proposal that we thought would be a win-win. We didn't want to wait until someone got hurt. The project went forward. It was never in danger. Children's knew and we knew that they had the votes, but this was an opportunity to improve on a project, to make sure that the community was also heard. Vernon Manor was an example of a win-win because Avondale gave some of their TIF dollars to make that happen for Children's. We wanted to see the same thing happen here. It's important to have a thriving business community, but we also have to make sure we listen to the voices of the people who live in our communities. And I'm proud of my record of doing both of those things well.
Ms. Simpson, thank you. Mr. Cranley, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Lincoln. This is the defining issue of this race. Will we work with people who are great partners, one of the best hospitals in the world, to welcome new jobs into the city? Or will we try to pull the rug out from under them at the last minute? That choice is clear in this election. I choose collaboration. I choose to work with people. And our policies are working, not just on children's, but thousands of other jobs. The fact is that Children's Hospital, for years, shared their plans with the community and are investing the largest single investment in the history of the city, $550 million, to expand services to help children. In addition, they're investing 30% in minority inclusion, free primary care for the kids of Avondale, and they are active in mentoring kids in neighborhood schools. They are good for Avondale. And my opponent's attempt to pull the rug out from them at the last minute treated them as if they owed us, they owed the city. The fact is, we should be thankful and grateful that businesses want to invest in the city, especially when they were asking for no tax dollars, as they were not asking for tax dollars. I think that if we want to see the progress continue with our track record of success, we have to continue the collaborative approach. I read the letter from Michael Fisher before tonight, and it reminded me that everything in her letter was not mentioned in all of the meetings that she had with them before.
Time, sir.
So the role of the mayor is to broker a successful relationship between the business community and the residents to find a win-win for everyone. John Cranley hasn't mentioned Avondale or the community once in his comments. That didn't happen in this case because his administration did not work to broker that deal and to bring everyone to the table. So as a council member, myself and several others had to make sure that those residents were heard. When our residents need us, we have to make sure they know that they are important, regardless how big the deal is.
Time. Mr. Cranley, rebuttal.
In an interview last week on Facebook with Together We Will, Councilmember Simpson referred to the children's vote as, quote, visionary. Visionary. What she did was visionary. I believe it's a disaster for job growth in our city. What's visionary from my point of view is working collaboratively to help 5,000 kids get out of poverty. Councilmember Simpson, her definition of visionary is to treat people the way she treated children. She said her only regret was that it happened so close to an election, which means when the election's over, that will be the new policy.
Local 12's Anjanette Levy has the next question for Mr. Cranley.
Mayor Cranley, the heroin epidemic is getting worse throughout our area, but particularly in the city of Cincinnati. In 2017, we've already surpassed the number of deaths or people who have died from overdoses than we had in 2016. I guess my question to you is, what policies do you support moving forward to reduce the number of overdose deaths from heroin and other opioids?
This is a huge issue. And first, I want to recognize our first responders, our police and fire, who spend their days chasing OD after OD with Narcan, the families that need addiction services. This is a major public health emergency. It's an epidemic. And we are triaging the situation with Narcan, with more beds. The tax dollars are going into that, and I support all of that. However, long term, we need to change the way this entire industry works. The Center for Disease Control has issued a study that says 80% of people addicted to heroin started with prescription painkillers. At 1 in 3, if you take OxyContin for 31 days, you have a 1 in 3 chance of being addicted a year later. That's a staggering statistic. If you had a 1 in 3 chance of becoming a zombie every time you took an Advil, would you ever take an Advil? Of course not. There needs to be a wholesale reform to this industry, which is why we sued, along with Mike DeWine, the Attorney General of the state of Ohio, the city of Dayton, to hold the people accountable who have already pled guilty to purposefully marketing drugs that they knew to be addictive. Last week, I was in a meeting, or maybe it was a week and a half ago, with Governor Kasich, who is taking real steps with the pharmacy board and the medical board to make sure that when people prescribe opiates, that there's serious limitations.
Time,
The
Mr. Cranley.
statistics are so bad.
Ms. Simpson, you have 90 seconds.
So the heroin epidemic is not a Cincinnati-only issue. It's a national issue, and we need to recognize that. And this isn't just about heroin. It's about addiction. We have to step up, and we have to lead the conversation on this issue. I was the first to introduce legislation to treat heroin as a public health issue, which it is. We're doing a great job on Narcan, which is considered reversal. We can't thank our first responders for their great work here. They're bearing the brunt of the responsibility because we haven't taken action on the other areas, which are treatment and prevention and law enforcement. They're reviving people 2, sometimes 3 times a day, and the fatigue is taking hold. We need to make sure we're leaning into these other responses. A year since the high spike, and we still don't have a strategy for transferring people immediately to treatment. We don't know how many beds are available, and we don't have adequate treatment or prevention dollars in play. We have to focus on making sure from a law enforcement standpoint, we are finding the sources of this carfentanil, because that's what's causing overdose deaths in great numbers. And because 90% of those who use heroin have a history of opioid drug addiction and at least one other drug, we must deal with the overall issue of addiction. So we need to make sure that we also lean into strategies for our young people. Young people are 10 times more likely to use heroin than they were 10 years ago. We have no strategy at this point for prevention. I'd make sure that we do that. Mr. Cranley has not taken the lead on this issue as he needs to, and as mayor, I would advance solutions that help both in the short and the long term.
Mr. Cranley, 30 seconds rebuttal.
Well, I think those are some good ideas. And I'd be happy to help work with you on any proposal. What I am doing is working with the mayors across the state and Governor Kasich and the Hamilton County Heroin Task Force with Denise Treehouse as the chair. And just recently, we announced a whole series of initiatives by working together and getting things done. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's hard to lead. What we're doing is putting in our budgets more effort into addiction services. We're helping our firefighters, which is why our firefighters have endorsed my reelection.
Ms. Simpson, your rebuttal.
We've advanced our proposal. It's a very comprehensive proposal. We did it a year ago. John Cranley's administration has not moved on it. In fact, instead of doing press conferences about suing pharmaceutical companies, we should be talking to the people who need treatment and making sure they have space so they can get their lives back on track. That's the most critical. And making sure our young people never touch this stuff in the first place. This isn't about a press conference. It's not about getting points. It's about helping real people work through the real issues of addiction. I've experienced this in my family, and I know how personally devastating it is. I would never play politics with addiction.
Another question now from Jeff Hirsch for Ms. Simpson. Jeff?
Over-the-Rhine, I think we all know, is a nationwide model of neighborhood revitalization. But there are a lot of longtime residents who can no longer afford to live in Over-the-Rhine. Is the city doing enough to provide affordable housing in Over-the-Rhine? And how do you define affordable?
So my campaign office is in Walnut Hills, and I've talked to my neighbors, and they're so excited about the development that's coming there, but they are worried that that development will not include them, that they will be forced out of their communities. I was the first to propose an affordable housing trust fund, and I'm glad that Vice Mayor Mann has now proposed a secondary option for funding that. We also need to look at the mixed income model of development, which has worked so well at Mercer. We've got a development at 15th and Race that I've supported. I've also been a huge supporter of projects like Scholar House, which takes single moms and gives them housing, daycare, and education so we get people from where they are to the next level. I've been one of the loudest voices on making sure the low and affordable developers are held accountable, that they have to give quality housing that they would live in. In the West End, we started a comprehensive plan for the neighborhood to make sure that the neighborhood is the loudest voice at the table when development comes in and that people are not forced out. I've also been very supportive of long-term sustainability for people who are low income, including renter equity programs and low-income housing so that they can own their housing, which gives them some sense that they can stay in their community and gives them some stability. We need to make sure that we're advocating on these issues. John Cranley in 2001 passed the Impaction Ordinance, which kept high-quality affordable housing in the city. If we had done Affordable Housing Trust Fund now, like Columbus, we'd have 10,000 more units of affordable housing in our city.
Mr. Cranley, 90 seconds.
like every other issue, it's about working together, and we are making progress by working together. Last year, Vice Mayor David Mann and I worked together on taking some of the Blue Ash Airport funds and making them available for new, affordable mixed-income projects throughout the city. This year, Kevin Flynn, P.G. Sittenfeld, David Mann, and myself put together a proposal that Councilmember Simpson just referenced, and that was unanimously passed by City Council that requires that developers of major commercial projects who are asking for tax incentives from the city make an annual contribution to create a new supply of mixed income affordable housing. These are the kinds of actions of working together and making things happen. But affordable housing is fundamentally an income issue. That's why our efforts with the Child Poverty Collaborative to bring people together from different walks of life, hospitals, human service organizations, agreeing to collaborate, share information, put results ahead of turf is going to make a huge difference, because if people earn more, they can afford more housing. And we are helping people learn a better living wage, which we passed at City Council for all work that the city does or contracts, and help people earn more by getting the job training, child care, and transportation they need to get into the ability to afford the housing that's available.
I want to reiterate that in 2001, Councilmember John Cranley helped pass the impaction ordinance, which prevented us from developing high-quality affordable housing. And now we're 40,000 units short in the county. Too little, too late. We need to make sure that we bring the community together with developers so that we don't see the same fights that we've seen at City Hall in our neighborhoods. The most affordable house is the one that you're living in right now. And we've seen John Cranley, through his code enforcement, cause people to go to jail because they don't have a retaining wall. We need to make sure people stay in the housing that they have right now. That's the best and first solution.
Mr. Cranley, your turn, sir.
She's getting pretty personal. A couple things. That is a gross misstatement of what happened in 2001. Thousands of units have been developed through federal housing policies. That policy just ensured that neighborhoods supported projects. Secondly, it's funny that she brings up Pastor Mingo, who I rushed to the jail to help get out of jail. And by the way, I've been advocating for a housing court so that people like him won't be mistreated. And by the way, Pastor Mingo, who I did help get out of jail that day, is supporting my reelection.
Lincoln Ware from Soul 101.5, your question for Mr. Cranley.
This is for Mayor Cranley. You know, some of your critics, including some on City Council, have said there is a pay-for-play system where developers who have contributed to your campaign get their projects fast-tracked, such as a proposed development on MLK. What's your reaction to those?
Oh, well, that's completely outrageous. I always do what I think is right for the city, and no contribution has any impact on that. In fact, the whole issue is coming about because, and the support that I've received, and I'm glad to have gotten the support from a wide set of folks, is because the people who are helping to create jobs in the city are afraid of Councilmember Simpson's policies. When you tell someone they have to pay $27 million for a zoning change, which is what she asked Children's Hospital to do, which is illegal and will bring economic development in this city to a screeching halt, it's not surprising that they've been very supportive. 4 years ago, there was no GE at the banks. 4 years ago, Kroger hadn't committed to a new grocery store in downtown and a $90 million building on top of it. 4 years ago, Mercy Hospital didn't have its headquarters in Bond Hill. But by working collaboratively and working with people who want to invest and bring jobs and investment to the city, we are making real progress. And just because things are going well doesn't mean it was an accident and doesn't mean it'll keep happening. And when Councilmember Simpson says that her only mistake was doing children so close to an election, you know that if she wins, that will become the way all businesses are treated.
So we need to restore people's faith and trust in City Hall, and I think we need to assure them that we're not putting the needs of a few ahead of the needs of many. When he first became mayor, John Cranley advanced a tax increase to not create a fund for parks, but to create a slush fund for his supporters. He was the centerpiece of that ad. And what we knew of that was that many of the projects, again, were not parks projects, but were projects that weren't park projects, but that would benefit people who were close to him. I think the pattern that we're seeing has been not just now, but what we've seen in the past. I think what we need to do is make sure we have more transparency. I would love to see all of the records of individuals who have done business at the city and who they're contributing to before the deal comes. And I think if we're making sure that we're taking care of the many and not advantaging the few, that John Cranley would agree to that. I think it's very important. I think the most important thing that we need to do is make sure the residents know that we work for them. And I think that means that in deals like what we saw at Mercy or what we saw at Keystone, when the community wants to see a bus shelter, we don't veto a bus shelter for the community when we just advance $6.5 million for parking. Those kind of decisions will show, I think, our citizens that we work for them. So I think the proof is in the pudding. I think it's very clear that this administration has benefited not those who need us the most, but those who already have enough.
Mr. Cranley.
I think the city is moving in the right direction, and we have the job growth to prove it. The fact is that Councilmember Simpson last week referred to her approach on Children's Hospital as visionary, and she only regretted doing it so close to an election. My definition of being visionary is helping to transition people out of poverty, working together and continuing to add jobs. Holding up deals at the last minute and demanding $27 million for a zone change is not visionary. It will bring our economic progress to a halt. And I think it's very clear what the stakes are in this election.
Ms. Simpson, your 30-second rebuttal.
There are so many issues in this election, and I love the fact that John Cranley continues to bring up one issue rather than talking about what's at hand. A good leader can answer the question and deal with the issue before them and won't continue to revisit an issue that frankly is one of many. My record is clear. I have always stood with community. And making sure that the voice of the community is heard is our job. Sometimes you have to have difficult conversations. And that means that we have to try to find the win-win. At the end of the day, John Cranley knows that the deal was never at risk. In fact, I voted yes so that it could get on the council agenda so that we can vote on it in the first place.
The next question is for Ms. Simpson from Local 12's Anjanette Levy.
Unfortunately, it takes a lot of money to run for office. You have about $300,000 in the bank, Ms. Simpson. Mayor Cranley, I think, has maybe a little more than $1 million. Given those disparities, who do you represent at City Hall?
Well, I'm proud of our record of making sure that we represent those who need us most. Some people joked that if I was trying to win an election, I'm serving the wrong people. We serve individuals who've been rescued from sex trafficking. Those are not people who are likely to finance a campaign, or young people who are under the age of 18. Again, they not only can't vote, but they can't fund our campaign. We serve neighborhoods and small businesses, again, not big donors and developers, but we do the work because it's important. We have to make sure that we're serving all of Cincinnati and not just a few. If we win the election, we want to do it because the people believe in us. 2/3 of voters said that they want to see a different type of leadership on primary day. They chose someone other than our current mayor. That means they believe that we're doing well, but we're not doing well for more people. And that's the kind of leadership that I plan to bring. And because I'm not beholden to a lot of developers or other big donors, I can serve freely and serve the people that we need to serve. But I will also make sure that we have a vibrant and growing city. I just won't have the golden handcuffs that some people might have as a result of taking dollars. I think it's very important to make sure that in this election, people feel like everyone has an opportunity to be heard. I'm proud to be the representative of the people, as well as a representative that we can do better, and we must do better.
Mr. Cranley.
I'm here to serve the people who felt left out 4 years ago when there were city brownouts and a firefighter couldn't get to you in a medical emergency. I'm representing the people who felt underserved by 150 cops that were no longer on the police force and crime was up. I'm serving the retirees and every city taxpayer who cares about the city's financial health when we were facing bankruptcy with the pension crisis. In 4 years, we ended the brownouts. We put 100 cops back on the street. We did the tough thing of dealing with the pension crisis and received an upgrade from S&P and Moody's last year because we put the city's financial house back in order. Those are the regular people of this city that just want the basics in the financial house of this city in good shape, and it's working to attract businesses that have a restored credit. But equally important is my passion for justice, which is why we've spent time to work together to reduce poverty, to close racial disparities, to invest in clean, renewable solar energy, because we believe that our progress needs to be progressive. And there's a lot more work to be done, but we have started it, and we are moving the city in the right direction.
Ms. Simpson.
So John Cranley and I have a different definition of basic services. I think the basics are making sure people have a roof over their head and they have a meal. But if we focus on the services that he's talking about, he still hasn't done good enough, right? I still hear residents across our city complain about high weeds, about trash. If you're going to put your stake in basic services, be the best at it. Columbus is beating us in one of the most clean cities. We're not the best at the basics, so we can't take credit for them. As mayor, we'll focus on the basics and we'll do them better so that we can spend our time on the issues of making sure our city is growing and we're serving everyone.
Mr. Cranley, your rebuttal.
Well, we are doing better, but we could do even better if we had your help. And it would have been nice if you had not voted against hiring more firefighters and more police and voting against the paving of roads that were neglected for too long. I think we work together when we all work together on these issues. And of course, there's more to be done. But the fact is that we restored the city's financial credit, we're attracting new jobs, and we're reaching out to those who haven't yet felt that renaissance and making sure that every neighborhood has a chance to succeed and that the people in those neighborhoods can do better.
Local 12's Jeff Hirsch has the next question for Mr. Cranley.
Mr. Cranley, during the last debate before the primary, you supported the city manager, Harry Black, who was basically your choice. And Ms. Simpson said at the time, if the option came, she'd like to see a nationwide search for a city manager, which Mr. Black could reapply, not exactly a vote of confidence. In light of the allegations made in the Jeffrey Butler lawsuit, have either of you modified your opinions of the city manager and his suitability to move forward to lead the city?
Absolutely not. The manager is doing a great job, and his partnership has been vital to restore the city's financial credit, to bring out the CAP program to help pave more roads and more bridges. But what's most exciting is his Office of Performance and Data Analytics, which has resulted in about $4 million in direct savings to the taxpayer by creating a culture of customer service. He brings people together. All department heads have to sign an agreement to lay out their goals for the year, how they're going to stay within their budget, but most importantly, how they're going to treat the citizen as a customer. The apps are much better to fix it, Cincy. The ability to find out when your road is going to be paved is now available online. These are real improvements that improve the life of everyday citizens. And it's creating that Office of Performance Data Analytics and CityStat, a lab, literally a laboratory where people from different departments come together to share best practices and how to improve customer service on a going forward basis. But the fact is that at a big picture level, this city is moving in the right direction. And we have a proven track record of progress, and the city manager is very much part of that.
So my answer remains the same too. I do believe that we need to do a national search, and I continue to invite the city manager to apply for that. You know, I think our goal is to make this city the #1 urban city in the country. It's a big goal, but I know, coming from where I come from and standing here today, that there is nothing that's impossible. So I've articulated a big vision, and I need to make sure that whoever runs our city is prepared to take us to the next level and not be complacent with the things that we've done in the last 4 years. I also raised concerns about whether the city manager feels like he works for one person or an entire council. We have a council manager system, and I think it's very important to make sure whoever our leader is knows that they work for everyone. The lawsuit does raise concerns. Whenever you have a top-level employee complaining of retaliation, that's serious. And we will have to see the outcome of the lawsuit before we make that determination. We've had situations in the past where, with a lot less evidence, we've removed individuals like we did with Jeffrey Blackwell. So I think it's important to make sure that we take these allegations seriously and that we have a city manager who we know will work well with the employees they have and who will make sure that they're responsive to the needs of everyone. I don't know that that excludes Harry Black, but I think it's important for us to make sure that we've got a best-in-class city manager, and if he rises to the top, then he will earn the job.
Mr. Cranley, your rebuttal.
Part of being the mayor is protecting the city's liability. Before knowing any facts, Councilmember Simpson called for a special prosecutor and joined with other council members for a special hearing. P.G. Sittenfeld, council member, referred to that hearing as a kangaroo court, that they were mistreating the city manager before allowing the process to go forward, which, by the way, jeopardizes the city's position in the lawsuit. The city lawyers, Vice Mayor David Mann, Council Member Sittenfeld, all advised against doing this. And sometimes as mayor, if you're ready to be mayor, it's about making sure you protect the city's liability and not engaging in what P.G. Sittenfeld called a kangaroo court.
Ms. Simpson, your rebuttal.
We shouldn't call people names, especially not when animals are involved. And I think it's very, very important for us to talk about how serious this is. And for 2 days, we didn't hear from the mayor at all about this issue. When we did hear from him, it was through press conferences that were diverting away from the issue at hand, which is what has our employee done regarding the employee that he's supposed to manage. That's leadership. Yes, you have to make tough calls, but we wanted to know the truth. We had this situation before with MSD where we did a special meeting. We were assured that there was no funny business. Turns out one of our whistleblower employees told us the truth, which is that people were being threatened with contracts if they didn't write checks. We have to make sure we have accountability. That's the job of the mayor.
Lincoln Ware directs the next question to Ms. Simpson.
All right, you're both Democrats. You have pretty much the same approaches to some issues. What are the major differences between you? In other words, other than style, what difference would it make to the voters in terms of their everyday lives if you or your opponent were in the mayor's office? Would it make a difference since you're both Democrats?
I think that this is less about party and it's more about perspective. You know, I grew up in a part of, our city that most people understand in our city considering our high poverty rate. And I bring that to work with me every day. It's why I spend a lot of time working with individuals who need us most. I think having that perspective makes sure that we have those voices the loudest at the table, and I've tried to do that. I also think having a big vision is important. John Cranley keeps talking about what he's done. He hasn't articulated a vision to be the best. What city are we if we don't want to be the very best? And Cincinnati can be #1. I plan to lead us there. You have to know that no one's going to have more vision, passion, or perspective to do this job than me. I also want to make sure that you understand that I work for you and not for the few. And what we know about John Cranley's record is that he steps up and speaks loudly when we're talking about those at the top, but he's pretty quiet when it comes to folks who need us most. And it's important to make sure that those voices are at the table as well. So you're going to have somebody who makes sure that all 52 neighborhoods are served, who's with you in the community, not when it's just an election year after a primary, but who's with you every single day hearing from you. In fact, we're going to make sure that 50% of our time is spent outside of City Hall, not behind the wall that John Cranley built to his office, but in communities where people can come to us with their issues and we can solve them on demand. We're just going to have a better functioning government, and we're going to make sure that we know who we work for. I know who I work for. I work for the citizens of Cincinnati.
Mr. Cranley?
Councilmember Simpson just used the word vision or visionary multiple times, and all year I've been wondering, what does that actually mean? Because there aren't a lot of specific policies. Well, we now know. Last week, she defined her approach to Children's Hospital as, quote, visionary. I disagree. I think helping to bring in jobs to the city is visionary. I think reducing poverty is visionary. I think investing in solar renewable energy is visionary. I think working across party lines to get things done like MSD is visionary. The second big difference, though, is collaboration. Every major great thing that's happened over the last couple of years has been a result of collaboration that I started. Whether it's the Child Poverty Collaborative, where we brought together hospitals and human services and leadership from the business community and people who have transitioned out of poverty, to immigration, to helping make Cincinnati more welcoming, to reducing the disparities by increasing contracts from 2 to 17%, have all come from collaboration. Denise Driehaus, Todd Portune, both who have endorsed me, and by the way, I am the only endorsed Democrat in this race. Collaboration is how you get things done, and we have a proven track record of getting done. And lastly, whether it's starting the Innocence Project, helping to revitalize Price Hill, dealing with the pension, I have the experience to get results. And that is something, given the progress we're making and all the challenges we have against in the future, is not something we should put at risk.
Ms. Simpson, your rebuttal.
So again, we're not hearing any vision from this mayor. He's talking about what he's done, but when I go around this city and I ask people, what do you believe the vision is for the city, they don't know, whether they're business leaders or whether they're citizens. We have a vision to make our city the #1 urban city in the country, and we do that by making sure we're serving both those who have in our business community and others, and those who don't. We will do that. It's interesting that John Cranley says I don't have a record, because he continues to take credit for the work that I've done in paid parental leave and increasing the Human Services Fund. He did a commercial taking credit for the work that I did. So I think he needs to check his record and make sure that he's owning the things he's done and not taking credit for other people's work.
Mr. Cranley.
As I've said many times before, when you pushed to increase human service funding, I supported it because I like to collaborate with people on important issues like fighting poverty. I just wish it had been a two-way street. I wish you'd spent the last 4 years meeting with me and others to solve the problems, as opposed to only meeting with people that agree with you. My record is about collaborating with people. Todd Portune, Denise Treehouse, David Mann, Kevin Flynn, the governor to help on the heroin issue, and that is getting results.
Time, sir. Local 12's Anjanette Levy has the next question for Mr. Cranley. Anjanette?
Mayor Cranley, do you support using public money to renovate US Bank Arena or to build a new stadium for FC Cincinnati? And which of those projects do you think is most important to the city?
Well, in an ideal world, they would both happen with private sector investment. I'm a big supporter of FC. I go to a lot of the games. I've met with MLS commissioner twice to push for a team. I think we will get a team. But I do not believe the city has the tax ability to put any public funds into the stadium. There is a long-standing question about whether, in order to attract new conventions, whether the hotel-motel tax should be used to support expansion of the convention center, which brings in new people from around the country for conventions, and whether or not that could be combined somehow with a renovated and improved US Bank Arena they were talking about getting the convention a couple years ago, et cetera. All of those decisions ultimately about the hotel-motel tax and the stadium are taxing decisions that the county commissioners have to make. It's a tough call. Obviously, I hope they help make those things happen in the city, but the city itself will not be putting taxpayer money into the stadium.
Ms. Simpson.
So I agree with that. I think these are both important things that we have to do. The US Bank Arena, because it affects our convention business. We lost the Republican National Convention and other large conventions because US Bank Arena is inadequate. And FC, as you know, is doing an amazing job re-energizing folks. Of course, in an ideal world, they'd be able to stay where they are. We know that that's not practical. And again, the county has to do the heavy lifting. I think we can help by making sure that we're looking across our country for resources. We didn't apply for the Smart Cities grant, for instance, even though every other city in the state of Ohio, including Canton, applied. That was a miss of $50 million that has leveraged $450 million in investment right up the road in Columbus. We haven't applied and don't have Bloomberg dollars here. We don't have Gates dollars here. I'm going to go across this country to make sure that every dollar that we can, we bring it back here. That's how we do big things. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that leadership from this mayor. He does not participate actively in the U.S. Conference of Mayors, where lots of great ideas are happening and where lots of money is being shared. I think what we have to do is sit down with both of those stakeholders, find out what resources they need, and make sure we're lobbying across the city to get those resources right here in our city. And I think if we can do that, we will see success in both of those endeavors.
Mr. Cranley.
Well, actually, I do actively participate in the Conference of Mayors. We are applying for as many grants that make sense, don't come with huge bill for the local taxpayers. We have just recently applied for Bloomberg funds to help fight poverty. But at a big ticket level, you're talking about US Bank Arena, FC Cincinnati. We have to make sure that priorities like the West Hills Viaduct and the Brent Spence Bridge are properly funded. That's why, in addition to working with the Conference of Mayors, I started the Ohio Mayors Alliance with the Mayor of Dayton to lobby Ohio to be more urban friendly and more Cincinnati friendly in the policies coming out of Columbus.
Ms. Simpson.
So when the Rail Transit Administration was here talking about the Cardinal Line, they explained that despite the fact that Cincinnati now has rail, we've never applied for transit-oriented development dollars. And I think it's really important. That's trillions of dollars and resources that are eligible for development in areas where we have rail. This is one example of dollars that we could use for some of these projects that are perhaps downtown and near our streetcar line. Most recently, we've applied for Bloomberg dollars. What were we doing 4 years ago? We needed those dollars early, and we did not apply for them.
Local 12's Jeff Hirsch now with a question for Ms. Simpson.
Ms. Simpson, as you no doubt know, the mayor has made poverty reduction a major part of his campaign and his agenda the last few years, the Child Poverty Collaborative, the Hand Up Initiative, and the poverty rate is down somewhat. What would you do specifically differently than what the mayor has done to try to deal with poverty, and particularly child poverty?
So first of all, this issue is personal to me. I was one of the kids who struggled to get out of poverty and was ultimately successful. I think what frustrates people most about politicians is that they overpromise and underdeliver. My record is that thousands of kids in poverty were given a job through the Youth to Work program. We started the Employment Pipeline program that put homeless people to work, increased the human services funding by $2.1 million, not with the help of John Cranley. Our programs have helped 12,000 people in its first year. The mayor's program helped 500 people over 2 years. That's real results. John Cranley promised 2 years ago to lift 10,000 kids out of poverty in 5 years. 2 years later, we're just receiving the recommendations a month before the end of his term. If you want to change someone's trajectory, you have to change their environment. We're going to focus on people and place. We're going to start with the most mission-critical people. What our research says in talking to actual people in poverty is that grandparent head of households are struggling, single moms who are not working are struggling, and young people who between 16 and 24 who are not working and not in school are the most mission critical. We would start there. We would also make sure, and we are, focused on the 9 neighborhoods where 51% of our kids live. We are going to build up capacity in neighborhoods to support those people so that they can lift themselves out of poverty. They should be the loudest and most pervasive voice in the room, and I don't believe they're at John Cranley's table.
Mr. Cranley, 90 seconds.
Councilmember Simpson's been on council for 6 years. If those proposals she just made, why didn't she introduce legislation? The policies she did introduce, I supported because they were good ideas. I just wish that spirit of cooperation had been a two-way street. The fact is that we have been making progress by collaborating. Our Hand Up initiative has helped hundreds of families transition out of poverty, and Councilmember Simpson voted against that funding when it got started. When we started the Child Poverty Collaborative, where we're working with a whole lot of other folks, it's beyond City Hall. It's a public-private partnership of working together. She wrote an op-ed criticizing it as too ambitious. I guess it wasn't visionary enough. I believe it is visionary to set a bold goal and then to ask other people to help meet that goal. And I believe that we would get a lot further if people would collaborate and work together instead of writing op-eds, criticizing efforts, voting against Hand Up initiative. The proposals that she actually introduced to council, as opposed to talking about, I supported because they were good ideas. And that's the kind of collaboration that works, and that's what would serve the whole city better if we not just stand on the sidelines and criticize, but roll up our sleeves, reach across the aisle, and get things done.
So the challenge with the Hand Up initiative was that it diverted funds from needed programs like PWC, which keeps seniors in their homes, rather than adding new dollars. That was my criticism, not that you're trying to serve people. And my criticism around making lofty goals is that people in poverty are tired of people overpromising and underdelivering. No grandstanding. We have to actually be able to do what we say we're going to do. I'm standing up for the 9,500 people who are still waiting on their world to change because you made a promise that you couldn't deliver on. And we've got to make sure that we stand up for those people who are waiting on that. I'm proud of my record. We've helped 12,000 people in 1 year just on one change, and it didn't show up in the mayor's budget after we got 9 members of council to sign on.
Mr. Cranley, 30 seconds.
We can't reach bold goals if we don't try, and trying means working with other folks. And that's why I wished Councilmember Simpson would either make specific proposals, because when she has in the past, I've supported them. Instead, she just criticizes from the side. I hear a lot about how it's personal, and I believe that. But we have to have specific plans with specific ways of paying for it. And everything that we've put forward has been paid for by tough choices, but choices that have helped families transition out of poverty because it is my priority.
I need to tell you that we're closing in on 8 o'clock, and in order to insulate your time at the end, we're going to have 1-minute answers for just the next question or two, and that will give you your proper time at the end of the broadcast. Lincoln Ware, the next question is yours, sir.
Okay, I'd like to ask, what is the future of Metro? Outdated buses, outdated routes, tax levy on the horizon. Where do you see Metro 2 years from now?
Mr. Cranley.
I believe we need a major improvement to our public transportation system. We have to integrate streetcar, bus, and Uber, taxi, and Lyft. In fact, we're working with Uber right now, where they're going to put some of their own money into helping people get to the job at the end of a bus line or at the beginning of a bus line to get to their jobs. For me, it's about the social justice of helping someone get to and from their job and back home. I'm the only candidate that has put out a specific plan with a specific way to pay for it. And I believe that the voters deserve to know what Councilmember Simpson's plan is. My plan is to do what every other major urban county in Ohio has done, is do a countywide sales tax, but then reduce the city's income tax. But that alone would take the funding from $50 million to over $70 million, a huge increase for more bus routes, more frequency, and the city would benefit by not being double taxed or paying for suburban bus service.
Time, sir. Ms. Simpson, you have 60 seconds.
So a healthy transportation system is vital to any successful city. Our system is not healthy right now. It takes a single mom or anyone who lives in Walnut Hills 2 hours to get from Walnut Hills to Mount Airy. Imagine dropping off at daycare on the way there. Imagine picking up groceries on the way home. It's not working. John Cranley's record on transit is vetoing bus shelters in Bond Hill and speaking out against bus shelters in Evanston. Oh, I forgot, it's also appointing his campaign treasurer to the SORTA board instead of a frequent bus rider. He also tried to remove the bike lanes that were in Central Parkway. He's introduced a plan that even the SORTA board has said will not work. So a plan that doesn't work is not a plan at all. What I suggest we do is what Columbus did, which was start by looking at our routes and reorganizing our routes. They were able to serve 100,000 people without adding another operating dollar. We start there. Then we make sure that the service takes people from home to work. The plan that John Cranley is advocating doesn't do that. In fact, it doesn't give us any more than we have right now. He's a consummate politician, but a poor public servant. That's not what we need.
Mr. Cranley and Ms. Simpson, we have 30-second rebuttals. Go right ahead, and then we'll get to our closings.
That was a lot of name calling. But you know, there was no plan. The question was, what is your plan? I have a plan. It increases the funding dramatically. It expands bus service. It helps people get to and from their jobs. You can't beat something with nothing. For the entire year now, we have asked, what is your plan? It's easy to criticize. It's easy to throw out a bunch of accusations. But where is the plan? Where's the beef?
Time, sir. So, that's all the time we have for questions tonight. Time now for Ms. Simpson. Go ahead with your rebuttal.
Okay.
I'm so interested in saving your time at the end. I'm moving right along. Go ahead.
So first of all, starting by studying your current system to save money for the taxpayer is a plan. And he hasn't done that as part of his plan. In fact, very little public input was put into his plan. His Uber proposal is out of touch. In order to have Uber, you got to have a credit card and you got to have a working smartphone. Most people in poverty don't have either of those, and we know how expensive Uber is. Most people can barely afford the ticket on the bus. That's why you have to listen to people in doing your plan and not do it in a silo and leave out the voices we're trying to serve.
Thank you. The order was determined by a coin toss for our closings tonight. And Mr. Cranley, you go first, sir.
Thank you. First, Uber is going to help pay for people who can't afford it. This city is moving in the right direction, and I don't think we should put all this progress at risk. Our values come from my family and faith. My wife, Dina, is here, and we were both products of this city and are very grateful for everything this city has done for us. And we want to leave it better than we found it, better for our son Joseph and for his kids. And we believe that that's about working with people to get things done, working with businesses who want to bring jobs to the city, not working against them. Not trying to pull the rug out at the last second, but rolling up our sleeves, reaching out across party aisles and neighborhood jurisdictions to bring people together and let's say, how do we build a better neighborhood? How do we expand opportunity? How do we continue to reduce crime? How do we continue to make sure that everyone feels that they're getting value for their tax dollar and moving this city in the right direction? I believe that the progress we've seen is not by accident. It's because our policies are working, because we've restored the fiscal house of the city. We put police and firefighters back on the street, and we're reaching out through collaboration to give people a chance at the American dream. And that's what adds meaning to our lives, and that's the leadership and spirit of leadership that we will continue to provide for the city.
Ms. Simpson, your close.
So my name is Yvette Simpson, and I'm running to become the next great mayor of the city of Cincinnati. We need a bold vision for our city. Together, we will make Cincinnati the #1 urban city in the country. We can only accomplish this vision if we are a city that is greater for every citizen. As your next mayor, I will bring our city together in a way that we need right now. I've lived in both the hills and the valleys of Cincinnati, so I'm uniquely equipped to serve and understand the diverse needs of our citizens. I will be a leader who truly listens to residents and puts their needs first. We need a mayor who understands that the loudest and most consistent voice in any decision-making table should be the people we seek to serve. We now have a mayor of good enough, and we need a mayor who knows that nothing is impossible and will work to accomplish even greater things. 2/3 of primary voters said that they want a change in leadership. They believe we can do better. We deserve better. As mayor, our work will be focused on people and place. We have a plan to prioritize neighborhoods, ensuring that every neighborhood is safe and clean, that neighborhoods receive the investment they need to grow, and that we engage citizens in determining their future. We will also ensure that we prepare our residents for the jobs of tomorrow and not of today, and that our children, regardless of where they grow up, will be given the tools they need to be successful. This is my home. This is my city. I am ready to lead right now. I humbly ask for your vote on November the 7th. Together, we will make our city greater for everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cranley. Thank you, sir. We appreciate your participation tonight. Ms. Simpson, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Great job.
It was a pleasure to be with you both tonight. I want to thank our hosts here at the School for the Creative and Performing Arts. They have been more than gracious as we invade the place and turn their theater into a television studio. We will have a complete wrap-up of the debate tonight at 10 on Star 64 and on Local 12 News live at 11. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you at 11.